Welcome to the channel. My name is Max Got the Tracks, and today I have for you a new format of video, one where I'm just gonna kind of rant. I'm gonna complain. I'm gonna take up an issue with the community. I'm gonna talk a lot about why I think patch wish lists are very dumb. And so for those who don't know, most people probably know me as a Runeterra player, Max Got the Tracks. But before I played Runeterra, from the age of 8 to 16, I was a professional Pokemon trading card game player. What that meant is I was one of the best players in Texas for the 8 seasons that I played. I played in the World Championships for pretty much that whole time. I think I missed maybe 1 or 2 World Championships. I top 8'd Nats, I won mini regionals, I dominated Houston, the city that I play in. And the last 2 seasons that I played, I was easily a top 20 player in the US and Canada, which is how Pokemon is ranked. So you can see I have these screenshots here. You can see my name right here. I was 15th. This is 2015, and then in 2016 I was 26 when the season was over. But in both these seasons, they flew me out to play in the World Championships. They gave me a paid hotel, a paid flight, a money stipend so I could chill in the city. These last 2 seasons were San Francisco and I believe Boston. So basically, I'm not trying to jerk myself off too much, but I was playing Pokemon competitively. I was a professional playing this game at the age of 15 and 16. I was beating adults and I was having a great time doing it. But I hated actually playing Pokemon. I hated it. I did not like the game. I'd played the game for 8 years. And these last 2 seasons were absolutely dreadful because the game was dominated by such degenerate strategies. Things like item lock on turn 1, things like Night March, where if you had $60 and a pack of sleeves, you could go to a tournament with like absolutely no skill, in my opinion, and pretty much top cut if you were decent. And like the people around you were, I mean, it just depended on what city you were in, but that was pretty much the truth of the matter at the time. It was just a horrible format and horrible seasons. And then so I see lore players complain, we need patch notes, we need patch notes, we need patch notes, we need this nerf, we need this nerf, we need this nerf. And I'm like, oh my god, if only you knew how good we have it. Compare this to other trading card games. Like I said, we've got Hearthstone, which didn't nerf degenerate cards for like the first 2 years of its existence, unless they like literally broke the game. Or something like Pokemon, like I said, where there will be a deck like Night March that dominates the format for like over a year, pretty much a year, and they will just be like, all right, let's just print some cards that kind of soft beat it, or let's just rotate it out, eventually it'll go away. It was so horrible to sit through these formats where these decks dominated, and if you weren't playing these decks, you were screwed. And they took up, like, if you go to a tournament, you're gonna face like 3 Night March players. It was horrible. As somebody who actually wanted to compete and have an interactive gameplay experience, it was terrible. And so this is why I'm so passionate about this topic, because I was good at Pokemon, objectively. Like, I'm not trying to flex, but like, this was a game I cared about, I loved, I was passionate about, and it just killed any motivation for me to compete. So let's take a look at some people, you know, complaining about nerfs on Twitter. We got the homie Dan. He says, my patch wish list is less nerf Riptide Sermon, Misfortune, Shelly, whatever, like just all the keywords that you don't like to play against. We've got Third Eye complaining, we gotta get Draven buffed back up, we need Sparklefly back. For what god, like please think about what you're actually tweeting out to these devs, who I promise you the devs are more active on Twitter and social media platforms than you think. They're just very good at holding their tongue, except for Ruben. But these people who work for Riot are actually quite present on social media. They want you to nerf Nami and Auction Horde, and then we've got Tricky saying, okay, I just want the patch wish list to be fun. Okay, now that all the Ionia players are gone because they don't know what fun means, we're gonna get the region, right? And it's like, bro, I understand the complaints against Ionia. It's not the most fun deck to play against at all times. Playing against Kennen, Ezreal, it's not a fun gameplay experience for 90% of the people who play against it, unless you're playing Pirates. But at the same time, that deck takes up like 1% of the meta. And here we have Kevor with some truth. The patch wish list, please change nothing or very few changes. The meta is great, and not just because I'm an Ionian idiot. I think everyone can find a deck they like, and that's a very good point. The deck diversity in Legends of Runeterra is absolutely insane. I would say there's over 20 like playable archetypes that you can easily hit masters with, and that is like unseen in other competitive card games, like as insane. Along with just like how many good cards there are, it's insane. So they say Kevor says maybe touch Ezreal and Kennen or Pirates just for tournament purposes, which I think is a decent idea. Like both of those decks, they're clearly a bit stronger than the other meta decks, and they could use a little bit of a nerf, but not much that's really worth complaining about. Like in the current meta, let's look at the most popular decks in the last week. We've got Gangplank Sejuani at an 8% play rate, which is totally new and something people aren't even complaining about yet. And still, with that deck, you're facing it like 1 in 10 games is essentially what that play rate means. We've got Pirates, which is like the boogeyman of the last month, basically, that some people complain about, some people are fine with, depending on if you're an aggro player or not, which is like obviously just skewed by your own biases. And that's at a 5% play rate, which means 1 in 20 games. Obviously, this is screwed because people play aggro and those games happen a little faster. So you're going to face it a little more than 1 in 20 games, but still, you're not playing as Pirates very often. Like, I played 20 games on a stream, and I stream the game every single day. I'll face like 2 Pirates decks, and those games are over in like 5 minutes. So, like, as somebody who streams and plays the game every day, I don't even see the presence of these decks as a big, like, oh, I just ruined my day, I just had to face 10 Pirates, because that's not the even like the most degenerate decks in history, like Ari Kennen, what was it, Azarelia, like those decks, you face them like maybe like 2 in 5 games, or like maybe like 1 in 10 games. Like they haven't had like a 15-20% play rate, anything close to that, and even that wouldn't be that bad. Same with Kaisa. So here we have the big boogeyman that everybody's complaining about right now, which is, oh, Nami decks need nerfs, Nami decks need nerfs. And let's look, the win rate is 56%. It is quite high, but the deck just became popular, like literally just became popular. And we see Pirates and Plunder actually starting to compete with those, right? Because it was old decks that people liked. They already had the champions crafted, and it became popular in the meta. So boom, it shoots up super high. But like, these are not issues, guys. This is not something where we're like, okay, immediately, boom, something is good, let's nerf it. That makes no sense, because the way card games work is that when something gets good, then people counter it, and then people counter the counter, and that's how the meta evolves, right? And lore has one of the best examples of this, which I'll touch on later. But like, people don't appreciate how much ways there are to manipulate the metagame in its current state. Because of the way the ladder system disincentivizes people from playing in the later season, we get these decks like TF, Nami, and Pirates, where people just don't want to try and challenge them because playing them just preserves their LP more. So okay, I'll just play this deck and I'll start camping, and that's just how the meta works at the moment. And I can get into that later, but for now, we've all made a patch wish list. I've done it, everybody's done it. I'm not saying you're a bad person for making these wish lists, but you're a bad person for complaining and actually acting like these changes need to happen for you to enjoy the game, because that's just not true. Maybe it is for you, maybe you can't enjoy the game unless Sparklefly gets buffed, but like, it's so silly. There's so many problems with the patch list, and we have it so good and we don't appreciate that. So some of the problems include uninformed opinions. Like one of the examples from the patch wish list that somebody posted was, let's make Misfortune to 3-2. If Misfortune is a 3-2, she turns into Draven. Where is Draven? Nowhere. There's no Draven on the ladder. Do you actually want that reality? Because I think Misfortune is a great, fun, interactive card. You have to kill her before she sees 4 swings. She's a very strong aggro presence. She makes the game fun for a lot of people. So if you just want to take her out of the game completely, that's fine. But realize that's what you're effectively doing. Same with Fleet Admiral Shelly. Like, I don't know who hurt you with Shelly, but she is not that broken of a card. She comes down and she has a lot of board presence, but she also costs 5 mana. Well, 4 mana with the tune effectively. But she needs all the spells to be played with her. Like, she's a very balanced card in my opinion. Like, I don't understand how you could like have this opinion unless you just don't play the game that much. And I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel about it. And the implementation issues. Another person said, let's make Akshan's Horde not be able to be duplicated, because they faced Infinite one time and they decided Infinite needed to change a key part of how Akshan as a card works, which I think is so confusing. Like, first of all, the implementation issue with that is you have to change like 5 different cards and how they interact with Akshan's Horde to actually stop it from being able to be duplicated, and that would take like hours and hours of the devs' time, right? It would take coding, it would take debates about whether or not they want to implement that. It takes a lot for the devs to actually be able to do something like that, right? And that's like thousands of dollars of Riot's time to fix one thing for a meta deck, which is Akshan Infinite, that is like 10 times more expensive than Akshan Horde. So that has a 45% play rate and less than a 1% play rate. I mean, a 45% win rate and less than a 1% play rate. Like, that makes literally no sense. I don't understand how somebody could actually think, yeah, the way we fix this, let's get Akshan's Horde so it can't be, like, no, that is like I understand. I don't want Infinite to be in the game either, trust me. It's like playing in Solitaire, it's like playing Night March. Like, it's just a one-sided game where one person's trying to achieve a goal and they're not interacting with the opponent. But that is like the stupidest, unproductive suggestion. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to roast you for that, but like, come on, like you're wasting everybody's time by typing this out and posting on Twitter and making me read this. I'm sorry. And then finally, like, my third complaint with the wish list is that they're just so vague most of the time. Like, okay, let's gut Ionia. Okay, how do you want to gut Ionia? Let's play game dev for a second. You want to gut Ionia. What does that actually mean? Do you want Deny to be 5 mana? That doesn't make any sense. Do you want either Dragon to be nerfed? It already has been, and it doesn't really do anything. Do you want them to stop releasing support for Ionia? Okay, then it just fades into non-existence. Like, there's so, like, Ionia as a region, it's one of the more polarized in history, where if an Ionia deck is strong, it dominates the metagame. And there's a couple reasons you can point to that, but that does not warrant us to want to say, okay, let's just make it so this region is never playable. Because that's, like, there's a ton of people, like Kevor, for example, who love playing Ionia decks because they're super interactive in some regards. Like, when they play against each other, like, they allow for some of the most big brain, like, the spell stacks that y'all will see on Twitter are because of Ionia, and they're very interesting and very fun to play. When you have to challenge two people, am I saying that Kennen Ezreal like breeds interaction? No, not at all. Trust me, I don't think that deck is fun to play against, and it clearly has like a very direct line of gameplay where they're trying to avoid meaningfully interacting with the opponent. But does that mean we should gut Ionia? Absolutely not. Like, we need to think about how we implement these changes and suggest them so a way they're actually effective. And I know I'm getting my butt blasted, I'm getting all blown out, and I'm getting all salty, and my gears are being grinded, but like, seriously guys, just like think for 2 seconds before you complain to the devs, because we can't, like, I can't stress enough how much I appreciate Legends of Runeterra as a game, because it's so interactive and the meta is so diverse and it allows for so much counterplay compared to these past card games that I've enjoyed and been a professional at. Like, it's so stressful for me to read these terrible takes. It's like, oh, they're gonna kill lore, oh, this is gonna do it, like, the devs hate us, like, and I'm not simping for the devs, but at the same time, I appreciate the work that Riot has done to make lore one of the best, like, competitive card games, and I don't think it gets appreciated enough, to be honest. So let's talk about timelines. Timelines was #1 this season. Everybody said, okay, this card is degenerate because Riot didn't consider that you could be using concurrent timelines with the weapon masters. At least I assume they didn't, because when they printed that, it just seemed like, bro, on turn 4, I'm facing like a 7-6 with Overwhelm. What is this bullshit? And I understand that. My girlfriend was playing in silver and she saw that and she was like, Max, what do I do? And I'm like, to be honest, baby, I don't know if you have anything to do. I think you might have just lost the game. And I understand that is super, super frustrating for the majority of the general player base. I can see how that is not fun. But at the same time, the 2 popular timelines decks combined have like less than a 5% play rate. I would say they probably have like a 3% play rate, which means you'll effectively play against them like 1 in 30 games, right? Or wait, I mean, let's just take Jax Vi. It has like a 1% play rate. That means you're facing like 1 in 100 games. Maybe I play 100 games in a week as a streamer who streams the game every day of the work week. Like, maybe I'll play against that, like, timelines once or twice. It's crazy. Like why these complaints that we voice and do so impatiently, they just don't make any sense because the meta evolves, which is something I'm going to talk about later in the video. We're all leading up to this idea of evolution. This is what I want to encourage lore players to do. So before I make that point, I just want to reiterate what I said about the lore team. They're quite small. Riot does not divert a lot of their billions of dollars of resources towards Legends of Runeterra. That's obvious. Like, even Ruben, a popular lore dev, is memeing that the team is so small. And that's like, if the team themselves is memeing about it, it's true. Like, they say lore devs don't exist, and there is some truth to it. There's literally some truth to it. There's limited resources, limited awareness, which is part of the reason we should have a rotation, because with a limited card pool, it allows them to actually be more hands-on and design the game in a way that it won't break every 5 seconds, like doing things with timelines with weapons masters. Like they couldn't have predicted that because the card pool is so large right now. That's why we need a limited card pool, and that's why things like patches that we get so often, what is it, like once a month or once every 2 months, like those help the game so much. Just because when the meta stagnates because of the way the ladder is currently set up, we need a little refresher, and we need things to become powerful and weaker, so that way we can continue to shift the meta effectively and keep up that interesting gameplay. But at the same time, the lore team has limited resources to be able to push the meta for us. Like that is something that the players have to take some amount of agency with, especially the ones at lower ranks who are complaining like, bro, the only reason I'm not ranking up is because I see all these Kai'Sa decks. But then we look like 2 weeks later and Pirates is the only deck dominating, and Kai'Sa has less than a 1% play rate after she's nerfed. So it's like, clearly there were things that could have been done before Kai'Sa to shift the meta to make it so that she wasn't such a dominating presence. And we already saw that as we approached the last seasonal, but it's just something that people like take for granted. How much control they do really have. Like, you have a lot of agency over the metagame that you don't appreciate, and it does take like just the level of maturity for us to recognize that, yo, like we have more power than we think in shifting the metagame. And especially people like 4LW, people who like always push the metagame, that I appreciate so much. Like Feint can bring any rogue deck and take it to the front page, and he's somebody, and he can also play Pirates and get to the front page. Like that versatility and that level of skill is so underrated and valuable. And like especially people like random 7HS, like he will take deep to high masters. Like people will take their own decks and get to high masters, and it's so interesting and lovely when they do it, because it just goes to prove that like one meta deck dominating does not stop you from playing the thing you enjoy if you have a decent skill level. And for the average player, they might not want to hear this. They might say, Max, like, I'm not a professional at this game. I'm not here to be like an expert at a single deck. I just want to play a decent meta deck that Majin Bey recommends to me and climb at a normal pace without facing Ezreal Kennen like 10 times in a row. And to that I say, do it. Like just do it. Like there is a level of skill and losing that you have to go through to become a better player that I think a lot of us don't appreciate. But I'm kind of ranting at this point. So let's talk about another problem with the patch list. Nick Makes Plays. He's wanted Eye of the Dragon nerfed since he started playing lore, basically. Why do we think that is? Because he's the most popular aggro player, and he's the most vocal aggro player that exists. He hits rank 1 most seasons by playing aggro. Yeah, like the meme. Like another example is Trinithan. Like everybody references Nick Makes Plays hatred for Eye of the Dragon because it's a meme. You can hate on the deck so much that it's a meme. Like, these patch notes are entirely fueled by what do you think is good, or these patch wish lists are entirely fueled by what you think is good and what you want to see the meta shift towards. So somebody like Nick Makes Plays, of course, in their nerf buff wish list, they're gonna say they want Eye of the Dragon nerfed, and that was in 2021. And even to this day, he's saying we want Eye of the Dragon nerfed. Like, bro, it's just like, this is an extreme example, but everybody behaves in this way whether they recognize it or not, and it's so frustrating. As somebody who does play a variety of decks and strategies, like, I tend to be an aggro player. When I played Pokemon, I played Darkrai Yveltal for like 2 years, and that was a super aggressive deck. When I started playing lore, I played at least Darius, and that was a super aggressive deck. I've wanted aggro nerfed at various times too, but now I find myself in 2022, a year or two out from when I started playing lore, and I'm using Lee Sin Akshan, and I'm using decks like Nasus Kindred, and I'm using decks like just like Heimerdinger Jace to win tournaments, and I'm like, whoa, like maybe I can enjoy the game in more ways than one. But it's something that I've learned, like, no matter what I'm playing at the time, I will want the opposite of it nerfed. Like whatever beats my deck, I feel like, oh my god, I wish the opposite of it was nerfed. And that's just a natural inclination that we're all gonna have. So to kind of conclude this video and end my ranting, I want to talk about how meta shift. So as we can see, like I said, Gangplank Sejuani rose to be like 8% play rate in the last week or two because it dominated against decks like Twisted Fate, MF, and it did pretty good against the majority of the Ionia decks, and it was playable into things like Heimerdinger Nora and the popular control decks that we saw. So it kind of hit the meta in a very niche, unique way that caught the pockets of each of the different decks that were countering each other at the time, and now it's the most played and one of the most successful decks, right? So your goal, instead of complaining, should be to continue to stay ahead of the meta. So once Gangplank Sejuani is the #1 deck, right, then we're gonna see control decks like Vengeance and Mini Morph, things like Darkness, things like Deep, decks that properly deal with those big plunder targets and also don't lose to the early game, get ahead. And then I expect once those become popular, we're gonna see the Ionia come back again, and we're gonna see the Deny, and we're gonna see Ionia probably come up to a 10% play rate. For those who don't know, Ionia right now, like 3 most popular decks combined have a sub 10% play rate. But my point is, just, you should make your goal, of course, have fun. Do what you want to do, try to meet your ranked goals, but don't compromise your fun to try to do that. And if playing against the most popular deck at the time kills your enjoyment of the game, you might just want to reevaluate like why you play the game and how you play the game. Because playing ranked Runeterra literally might not just be for you. Or you might have to just think about your mindset and how playing against those decks kills your enjoyment and why that may be, and how you can like just take those 1 in 20 games that you're facing against the most popular deck and be like, okay, how can I shift my mindset so that way when I face those decks and I lose or win, I don't get so down on myself, you know? But my point being, just have fun with the game. Try to stay ahead of the meta. Try to adapt. Try to do things that will boost your enjoyment of the game instead of taking to Twitter and complaining and being like, this needs nerf, this needs nerf, this needs nerf, and my favorite card needs a buff. Because that's not productive for anybody except your like the bad parts of your ego that are like, the only reason you're not climbing is XYZ. When there's players all the time who are climbing with their gimmick cheese decks, with their own pet decks like Rico Rex, who always uses Overwhelm, and are having significant more success than you. And this is from a hyper competitive standpoint. So I understand those who are rolling their eyes right now and being like, bro, this guy doesn't get it. But I feel like just take what I said and apply it to how you want to enjoy the game. So if you enjoy playing your rogue decks and you're not even trying to rank up, you're happy with where you are at plat, then tailor your rogue decks to be beating the most popular decks, however that takes. For me, one example, I took Puff Caps to Masters during the season that Mono Shurima was dominating. It had like an 11-12% play rate, it had like a 60% win rate, and it was just the most degenerate deck you could possibly imagine. So what did I do? I teched in 3 entrapment, and I teched in a lot of early aggression, and that made it really hard for Mono Shurima to beat me, and I had a positive win rate against that deck using Puff Caps. So like I wasn't even trying to be #1 rank, but I still was able to find a way to enjoy the game at that time just by tailoring my deck to meme on the Mono Shurima. So yeah, and I understand it's a natural like progression that, okay, whatever dominates the meta, we're gonna have people complaining about it. Because we come from people like BBG, like top streamers, who their whole stick and their whole gimmick was like, okay, I'm gonna play the game, be deadpan, and then when I lose, I'm gonna complain about whatever just beat me. And like it's reasonable that a lot of the community acts in that way because that's what we've seen. That's like what we view as reasonable behavior. But I think that's so backwards, and especially just like on the internet, complaining is popular. That's just the truth of the matter. Negativity becomes popular because it's cheap. It makes other people feel good because it's really easy to empathize with, and it's just like a really like fast. It's a very gratifying thing to just complain because you feel like you're getting that cathartic like expression. You're like, cool. Now that I've complained, I feel like I'm just and I'm good and everything is right in the world because people hear that this thing needs to be fixed and it's out of my hands now. In the end of the day, it's like much more rewarding and much more fun to actually like take these things into your own hands and enjoy the game on your own terms, so that way whatever happens around you within the metagame, you can still feel like you have a sense of control and like you're in the driver's seat at that point. Once you feel like you control the meta as much as the meta shifts, you feel like you have a sense of like, okay, I'm actually going to be able to have fun with the game no matter what state it's in. And that's when like you're really playing lore in like its best state, in my opinion. So yeah, evolve, gamers. That's all oh sorry, I have myself covered. That's all I ask of you. Please like consider trying the game in new ways, enjoy the game, have fun. You know, Legends of Runeterra, like I said, Riot has made, in my opinion, one of the best card games of all time. I think it's gonna end up being the most popular card game of all time, and I really hope y'all like do just try to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it right now, if the meta's broken to you, just consider the words that I said and put yourself in the driver's seat and watch the meta shift as it always does. And until I see you next time, remember, my name is Max Got the Tracks, and I'm not responsible for your LP, and I appreciate you for watching. Goodbye.